Hi, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of The Geeky Waffle. I am your host this week. My name is Hope, and I am joined by a renowned voice actor who has absolutely defined your childhood. He is the voice of Tetsuo in Akira, Alpha 5 in Power Rangers Turbo. If you watched Fox Kids at least once, you heard him as the announcer. But he is best known for the role of Tai Kamiya in Digimon, which we are here to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Digimon. Welcome to the Geeky Waffle, Mr. Joshua Seth.
Yeah, what an intro. Thank you, Hope. It's all true.
No, but I really do mean it. Like, you are like a definer of childhoods. I grew up with Fox Kids. I personally love Digimon. It's one of those franchises that's just stuck with me.
Mhm.
And so, what do you think it is about Digimon that has such staying power?
I think, first of all, it was a bit ahead of its time. I mean, it was part of that first wave of anime that introduced American audiences to what was already going on in Japan and overseas. So, anytime you're introduced to a new art form or a new style of storytelling, that's bound to stick with you. And Digimon was part of that first wave. So everything from that era, I think, has a lot of nostalgic appeal for people that grew up with it. But additionally, Digimon was ahead of its time in terms of themes, because if you'll recall, in the very first scene of the very first episode, my character Tai was sitting in a tree at summer camp, and all his friends were playing outside and having a great time and in nature and with each other. And then these digivices, because this is before cell phones and iPads and things, realize these digivices, which were essentially like what we all hold in our hands now, like a portal into a digital world that resides in the cloud. It drops into our hands, and everything from then on in Digimon is about the battle to regain balance between the virtual world or the digital world and life and the real world. And so, like, I think on a deep level that's not really necessarily consciously thought about by the audience, it just resonates with the experience that we have all been living since then until now.
I'm glad you touched on the themes, because that was one of my personal favorite things about Digimon, is that it never pulled its punches and it never talked down to its audience.
Mhm.
And even as a kid, I remember watching, aside from saving the world with our fun animal adventures and stuff, these kids had very real world problems, you
Yeah,
know. And like Izzy has anxiety from being adopted, and Kyrie was sick her entire childhood, and Ty
right.
is literally scared his sister's gonna die. And like, I loved that about the show, because it had these such important themes that even as a kid that I've carried with me into adulthood.
And the crests, like being able to represent the crest of courage for Tai, like these are the reasons that people get tattoos, for instance, of these crests, is because they recognize the value of them and the symbolism inherent in the story that's being told. And of course, there's more. We could go on and on about the importance of those themes, like friendship, for instance, growing together throughout the series and all the movies, even as you grow apart in terms of your interest or where you happen to live, and then coming back together with your friends and doing something amazing or helpful or memorable with one another. It's it is anime, and on one level it exists just for pure entertainment and fun, but on a deeper level, I think it resonates with the audience because of these core themes that mirror what we go on, what we deal with in our own lives. Everybody deals with in one way or another. And the themes of friendship and going apart and coming back together. And then in Last Evolution, Kazuna, the most recent movie that I did, finally putting aside those childish things in the process of growing up.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad that's a beautiful segue into my next question.
You're welcome.
You have played Ty for 25 years,
Yeah.
from his youngest moment in the movie when he's
Mhm.
literally a child to the epilogue in the O2 Adventures where he is a father. What has it been like to go on this journey with such an iconic character for 25 years to essentially be in every single major moment of his life, from childhood to fatherhood.
I'm very lucky that I get to be associated with the quintessential anime hero, essentially. I mean, it could have gone the other way. I could have been associated with the quintessential anime villain, since I voiced Tetsuo and Akira. But as much as I love Akira, uh, for me to be able to voice this heroic character on this journey from infancy to, as you said, fatherhood, as an actor, I mean, who gets to do that on camera or in
It's
voiceover?
it's
Yeah, I
very
feel
rare.
very
Yeah.
lucky.
And you're a father yourself, correct?
Yes, yeah, I have 2 kids.
Does Tai, when Tai became a father, or when you became a father, did that kind of change your feelings about the character at all?
No.
Okay.
No, because even in life, you're still the same person. I don't believe anybody's ever really ready to be a parent. You rise to the occasion, hopefully. And that, I mean, that happens even in the battle scenes in Digimon. As the movies progress, Tai becomes more of a reluctant warrior, because he's becomes cognizant of maybe the damage and destruction that can be wrought as a result of him deciding to fight and to send everybody into battle, but sometimes that's necessary in order to get the outcome and to prevail. It's the same thing with parenthood. Like, you're thrust into this situation for which you are ultimately unprepared, and it's up to us to rise to the challenge. I don't really feel I was an adult until I had kids. So as to whether that's the case for Tai, maybe script writers in the future will explore that. But yeah, so far it's kind of just been touched upon.
I understand that.
Mhm.
What is it about Tai, do you think, that makes him such a memorable character? That he has this staying power a quarter of a century later?
Mhm. It's the combination of courage and vulnerability and self-doubt. It's he's not just a caricature. He's not just like saying, "Come on, let's go, let's fight" all the time. He's considering, like I said, the consequences of his actions or the input of his friends. As a leader really should be. He can be brash. Certainly, he can be impulsive, but he can also be thoughtful and introspective. He's always a good friend and loyal. But then again, he sometimes fights with his friends, like with Matt, for instance. So it's the humanity, essentially. It's the humanity in the character that we get to see a leader, especially in anime, that's more 3-dimensional.
Do you think that this kind of story and these characters work in anime, or do you think that being anime is what sets it apart from, say, an American animated show?
Maybe less so now, but certainly when it first came out, absolutely. For 2 reasons. One, prior to anime becoming popular in America, the most edgy animation that I saw growing up would be like Bugs Bunny on Looney Tunes.
Hmm.
Animation was really considered for kids, storytelling for kids, which of course is ridiculous. Even back then, there was animation that was appealing to adults as well as kids. Uh, Bluth did the Hobbit, the animated The Hobbit, which I think
Oh,
still
it's
stands
so
up as a
good.
great movie. There was an animated movie called Heavy Metal that appealed to adults. I don't know how I just pulled that out of my brain, but that's true. And
That's okay. I
and
went to Allegro Non Troppo, which is definitely like a very European animated movie.
okay,
So I'm with you.
there was some animation for the one about the rabbits, the dying the
Oh, Watership Down.
Watership Down. Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
and Rock and
arguably not
Rule.
even for kids. Okay, but those are very rare exceptions, few and far between. Mostly, especially like Saturday morning cartoons, was considered just for kids. And when I saw my first anime, which was in film school, I went to NYU to Tisch to study film, TV, and radio. The first anime I ever saw was there when I saw the original Kira, and it just blew my mind because of the adult themes and the quality of the artwork and the music and the overwhelming experience that it was for me at the time made me want to become involved and become a voice actor as a result. we could save that for another interview, perhaps, because I have a lot of stories about Akira too. But it's it's two things. One is because it was anime and because anime was new, Digimon was able to do things in terms of storytelling that weren't done in traditional animation in America. Like, for instance, the monsters having guns. Like, that's not something that you would have
Yes.
seen, or even in other anime at the time. You correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think Pokemon ever had any, weaponry like that.
There is one episode in Pokemon that was edited
I,
out because somebody pointed a
I
gun
stand
at
corrected.
Ash. Yeah, someone putting in a gun at
Yes.
Ash, and it was also very common in both like Yu-Gi-Oh and Sailor Moon too at that time.
Yeah.
So
Like you pointed out, Ty's younger sister Kari always being sick and going to the hospital, and that's nothing that you would have seen in Saturday morning cartoons prior to it. So yeah, part of it is anime, but now that we've come so far and anime has become so popular, I think Digimon could even be successfully told in a live action.
oh. Whoa. Okay. First of all, don't threaten me with a good time because that sounds amazing.
It's possible.
Wow. It is possible, especially now in like with the technology that we have. Yeah, it really
I just
could.
heard they were going to do a Naruto live action.
Yes, they are.
This isn't an unprecedented concept.
And they just did One Piece too, and that's been really successful as well. So so I have a very, very important question I must ask you.
All right.
Why is Tai and Kari's mom the best character in the franchise?
Well,
Because she is.
First of all, because the voice actress Dorothy Fawn is just one of the best people. She's so sweet, as is her husband Tom Fawn, voice of Agumon. Hi, Tai, that guy. Uh, but also, she just delivers these ridiculous lines with a straight face, and that's the essence of that style of comedy, right? Is to ask if I want liver shakes or something, but not tip to the fact that it's a joke. So the way that she's delivering those lines is so deadpan that it gives me the latitude. If it were who was the Jerry Lewis, and when he had a comedy duo, I'm dating myself by even knowing this, but like the other guy was always deadpan, and then Jerry Lewis was like Flavin, Ty's essentially doing that, like, oh mom, it's that dynamic.
So I absolutely love Ty's mom. I was rewatching a little bit of the movie, and I just forgot how funny she was. And then
Dean Martin, that's who it was. Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. I had to Google that.
And I loved that kind of style of comedy that was brought to it because it kind of, and one way it's kind of a time capsule of the early 2000s, but these are kind of jokes that have stuck with me over time. Like I still quote, what's that? A sign from above? No, here on the ground. Like it's a timeless.
It's essentially dad jokes.
They are, but that's what makes them so timeless in a way. And I think that like what people would consider like cheesy writing is actually really underrated because it's what kind of makes Digimon timeless, at least to me.
I got to give a shout out to Jeff Nimoy, director of the Digimon movie and the voice of Tentomon, although I did it at the very beginning, Tentomon, but he was mostly the voice of Tentomon and part of the writing team, the script adaptation team with Bob Buchholz. Jeff Nimoy is just a funny guy, and he actually did a movie called Famish about the convention scene, which is pretty interesting too. Anyway, he's responsible for a lot of those dad jokes, especially in Digimon the movie, and I got to play around with him in the booth and come up with stuff on the fly. But he has that almost like Catskill comedian sensibility about his humor that I just think it pairs so well with the series.
So when it comes to Tai and like the future of the Digimon and the next 25 years of Digimon, what sort of stories would you like to see from Tai? Like maybe a father-son team up, or
that would be so good.
Or do you think his story is complete?
I don't think it'll ever be complete. It's just like Star Wars, right? We can fill in the gaps in between. They did the reboot, which is essentially Digimon in the multiverse with the whole different cast. They can go back and do prequels and create stories forever as long as the audience demands it. And lucky for us, the audience has only continued to grow over time. I do these signings at Comic-Cons all the time, and people bring me collectibles. I was telling you before we started recording, I was signing at a Comic-Con in the Atlanta area just yesterday, just this past weekend. And people, I mean, lots of people brought things for me to sign that they have saved for 20 years, 25 years, since they were a little kid, because it's meaningful to them. And when you have that kind of fan support, there's no reason to ever stop telling new stories and making new shows.
I think one of my favorite things about the pictures that you share is people bringing their children to be like, now I'm sharing Digimon with this
Mhm.
next generation.
Yes, that's called good parenting.
Yes, it is. I don't think my cat would
Yeah.
appreciate
My
Digimon.
daughter, Nikita Seth, actually has a voice agent out in LA and is auditioning for stuff because we can do everything remotely now, right? I'm
Mm.
actually, this is a green screen behind me, obviously, but I have my actual recording studio right next to my computer setup here, and I have the same microphone in there that I would use in a production studio in Hollywood. I could do all the same recording remotely here that I would do if I still lived out in Los Angeles. So it would be great for me if they ever did do Tai as a parent and my daughter Nikita could play the kid. Oh man, what a full circle moment
Oh,
that would be for me, because she will be
ah,
voicing things. She has that gift.
I would adore that actually, because like I saw how your eyes lit up when I mentioned
Yeah.
that. Is there ever a topic about Tai or Digimon that you've always wanted to talk about, but nobody has ever asked you
Oh,
about?
I doubt that. But I could tell you how I got the role, which is kind of
I would
interesting.
love to hear that.
All right. So at the time, Digimon was produced by a company called Saban, which many people realize Saban is the company behind
Mighty
Fox Kids
Morphin Power
and Power
Rangers.
Rangers. That's right. Well, while Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was going on, I was beginning my career as an anime voice actor with Saban on some series that people have basically never heard of. I think the first one was called Journey to the Heart of the World, or Journey to the Center of the Earth, or something along those lines. I played the sidekick. And then the next series, they gave me the starring role of Honeybee Hutch in the series of the same name, which is a very cute show. It was something like 65 episodes, and I really learned how to dub anime with that series. But nobody's ever seen it. I think because it's just too violent. It's a honeybee dodging certain death by insects, and it's all from the perspective of like in ants or something. It's from the perspective of these like bees and insects and things, and the praying mantis stabbing
Oh,
friends and relatives. It's pretty
so
violent for a
Watership Down for bugs.
yeah, right. For it should be a cute kid show. Honeybee Hutch, Honeybee Hutch. It's a little honeybee. It's like that. Anyway, that was Saban as well. So as I'm doing these projects, I'm getting to network with the directors, the writers, the producers at Saban. But I'd still never been up to the production studio where they did Power Rangers until I believe it's Power Rangers Turbo. I was told that by fans enough times that I believe it. This was so long ago. There was no Wikipedia, there was no Google, there were no cell phones, there was no social media. So memory can get a little fuzzy, but I'm pretty sure it was about 98 when Richard Horvitz, who was the voice of Alpha 5, left.
Hmm.
Now, I always thought he left because he started doing Invader Zim. And you had to drive all the way up to Valencia, which is like an hour north of Los Angeles, to voice on Power Rangers at the time, because there was no remote recording. We're talking like 25 years ago. And it was far, and I just figured he didn't have time to do both. I actually saw him at a convention recently, and we were backstage talking about this. And he said, no, it was a contractual dispute. He wanted more money, and they wanted to give him less money. So he walked. I never knew this at the time. All I knew was the people at Saban that I was already working with asked if I could come and voice this character on Power Rangers. I don't think I even knew what it was. It was just a gig. I thought it was like a one-day thing, and then once I got there, they said, "Oh, it's Alpha 5." Aye, aye, aye. And I only did those few episodes. It was only a part of a season that character was in. However, the timing was perfect because Saban was about to launch Fox Kids, and their big new show was Digimon, and nobody knew what a huge success and long running hit it would be. But they wanted me to read for the main character of Tai, And I kind of had an in because they knew I could do the job, that if I sounded like what they wanted, they could rely on me to show up and deliver the goods. So they handed me a one sheet, like one page with a picture of Tai in like a fighting stance and a short paragraph description of him and a few lines to read, which is pretty typical. Well, I I saw that and I read what he was about. It's like, okay, he's the leader of this group of kids and they're of a certain age and they're normal. And then they get these almost magical powers essentially that drop out of the sky. Harry Potter was new at the time. And I've always advocated reading out loud for voice actors. So you get used to your own voice and you can normalize taking two-dimensional words on a page and breathing life into them, and also expanding your range of characters by voicing all the characters. I didn't have kids at the time. I would read Harry Potter out loud to nobody or anybody that was there just for fun. Anyway, it occurred to me that Ty's journey in this series is basically like Harry Potter, Harry himself. So I'm thinking Harry, because I had almost nothing to go on. It wasn't like now where you can research stuff on YouTube and see what it was like in the original Japanese. I mean, I literally was just holding a piece of paper and I thought, okay, well, he's about the same age as Harry Potter. And in both cases, they're just normal kids and this power just lands in their lap out of in one case, it's a wand, and in another case it's a digivice, but this is what I'm going to use as my backstory, so there's some richness and fullness to the characterization and it's not just two-dimensional. So I held that in my head while I was auditioning for this heroic character of Tai, and I also wisely decided to just basically use my own voice, and I just enhanced the graveliness a little bit, just pitch it up ever so slightly, enhance the graveliness a little bit to make him a little younger and more to the sound, which was a good plan because voicing any character for 25 years, you grow, your instrument, your body changes, but because it's basically my voice, it's always easy for me to get back into. And that was enough to differentiate me from everybody else that was auditioning for this role. And that's how I got Tai, and actually at least half a dozen other of characters, digital monsters that I portrayed on that first season of Digimon.
So I was excited to hear you talk about Richard Horowitz because, and we love him in this house.
He's excellent. Yeah.
I would be remiss though, as you were talking about like jumping into voice acting and stuff like that. You have a monthly voice acting class.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. At the beginning of the pandemic, when everything shut down, honestly, I really should have just started recording remotely. But I quit voice acting around 2008 because I felt it was unfair for the actors to not get residuals for these shows that had been running now for years and were, big hits. And I don't want to get too in the weeds about contract negotiations, but anime is under the foreign dubbing contract, which is I still believe not the appropriate contract because it doesn't pay residuals. You just get the session fee for showing up for working that day, and you never get another penny ever again. So Digimon is like the 74th highest grossing media franchise in the world, just ahead of Fast and the Furious. But I'm also a mentalist. I do stage shows. I'll make more in one night doing my show than I did in all seasons and all movies of Digimon that I've ever done over 25 years. Like there's that big a disparity. So I left LA and I left
I'm
voice
grappling
acting.
with that, how
Yeah.
horrible that is,
Yeah.
especially like, coming off like the SAG strikes that we were in full
SAG
support
strike
of.
was partly about that because now
Yeah.
on-camera actors are in the same situation because they weren't getting residuals for streaming. So there
Mm-hmm.
could be a hit on Netflix that you got paid $1,000 or something, let's say, like round numbers, like SAG minimum day rate to be on, but you never get another penny again. Now, people that aren't in the business that make an hourly wage might think that's a hell of a lot of money for a day's work,
It's not.
but it's not a day's work.
It's
It
not.
might be the only thing you book that month. It might be compensation for dozens of auditions you go on that you don't book, and it's paying you back for years of training and theater and classes and all these things, right?
Yeah.
So
Especially
it,
like that's something I've been like really kind of interested in because the Animation Guild is more than likely striking this year,
I've
because
been getting emails about this. Yeah.
yeah, their contracts are coming up as well. So I really hope that that's
Well,
something that's addressed. But I'm
original animation is
yeah.
not in that same category. It's only anime that is in the dubbing category without residuals. So it was my objection to not getting residuals essentially that led me to leave Hollywood and leave voice acting. So when things went remote at the beginning of the pandemic, now that I don't live in LA anymore, I live in Florida. I really should have started recording remotely, and I was slow to get wise to that. But what I did do is I started teaching Zoom classes for voice actors because I'd been asked for years to teach classes, and I didn't have any opportunity to do it because I don't live in a hub. I found that I'm actually pretty good at it, and I like it because I feel like I'm helping people shortcut the years and years it took me to become successful at this. I mentioned I had a radio show in college, and I actually used that to put together my original demo to get an agent. And I moved from New York City, where I was studying performing arts, to go to Los Angeles to become a voice actor. But it was a half a dozen years before I was doing it successfully. And these days, it does not have to take that much time and money in order to pursue your dream and actually profit from it. But you need training, and you need someone with an ear and someone who's honest enough to have a conversation with you and say, you do well to focus in this area and maybe let go of that idea. I'm not one of these coaches that feels like I'm just here to, as a cheerleader. I want to give you good feedback that is helpful. So I like teaching these Zoom classes as a result. And we have a really good group, and it's been going on in one form or another for over 3 years now. I keep it small, only about 20 voice actors at a time, so that everybody can get time on the mic and get feedback. We do it the last Wednesday of every month. If you're interested, you go to joshuaseth.com/mastermind and check it out. And I really like being able to give back in that way because, like I said, it's something that would have helped me shave years, literally years, off of my learning curve when I first started out. But the
Yeah.
technology was not available, and now it is. And then to finish the story about remote recording, now post pandemic, even though a lot of voice acting has moved back into the studio, studios are generally still open to remote recording if you have a good setup, and I do. So I'm now represented by an agent out in Los Angeles, and I'm recording and auditioning several times a week, and it just feels great to be able to put out some creative output like that without compromising where I want to live or what I want to do with the rest of my time, which is the stage, which is my stage show.
I will make sure to put a link to that in the show notes. And the last question I wanted to ask you is, what would you like to see from Digimon in the next 25 years?
That it continues. Like that there's so many opportunities that have remained unexplored in the franchise in terms of types of stories that can be told and avenues through which to tell it. Digimon hasn't had a lot of video games really compared to Pokemon, let's say. So there's more opportunities there now that video games have become much more cinematic in terms of its storytelling. I would love to do something like that. Can you imagine Tai and the gang of Digidestined in a dialogue heavy video game, something like Last of Us
That
or
would
the
be so
Spider-Man video games or something where
good.
where you're playing these characters and they're conversing with you and you're in the middle of the action and it's an open world. Like, oh, I would love to do something like that.
Take all my money now.
Yeah,
Just take my money.
yeah.
Or even just
I
like an
think there
open
should
world,
be
like a Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I think there should be a live action of it as well. I'd love to keep making movies, even though Digimon Last Evolution Kazuna was the end of the journey. Who's to say there can't be other chapters at other points along the way?
We already decided that you and your daughter have to do an episode. So
And
like it's
that
yeah.
definitely.
we've already decided. So, well, Mr. Seth, thank you so much for coming and talking about a franchise that I grew up with and that I love so much still to this day. Um, and I appreciate you being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for watching, and everyone stay geeky.
See you at a Comic-Con. Bye-bye.